Hey guys, BuildZoid here, and today we're going to be going through Asrock's Z590 motherboard lineup. Their Z490 lineup really sucked, but Z590 is looking a lot better, so yeah. The main thing is I don't know the prices right now, but once we see the prices, I guess we'll see. Actually, I think some of the Asrock boards are up on Newegg already. Oh yeah, they are. So we do have some references for these. So, Intel motherboards, wait, chipset, Z590. Oh, well, that's all of them. So we have some rough indication of price points at least. It's like we're not going completely blind even if we don't know the whole lineup. So, yeah, let's get into it. I guess let's start off with the Tai Chi since Asrock thinks it's the best, which is why it has the biggest picture, right? So let's see, we've got a 14-phase VRM, so I think that's the same VRM that they had on Z490, so that should be 12 plus 2, but I think, yeah, they upgraded to 90 amp smart power stages, so not the strongest of Z590 VRMs, and I don't think it's going to be even particularly strong for the price point that this is at, but, actually, let's check the old Z490 Tai Chi. Z490 and Asrock. Perfect. So that was 350. Actually, okay, in that case it'll be no. No, you can definitely get cheaper boards with like the same V-Core VRM configuration that this is going to have. So, yeah, but that's not the main point of the Tai Chi boards. The main point of the Tai Chi boards is that normally they're totally loaded with features. So, let's see if that's the case here. So, we do have dual LAN, an okay number of USB ports, I guess. No, 6 Type A's is not okay with me, but, well, for people who like Type C, I guess you get 2 of those, so that's nice. We have BIOS flashback, but no clear CMOS button in the rear I/O, which I think the Z490 board did have, so that's kind of disappointing. Wi-Fi 6E. We have an HDMI out for your iGPU that you're never going to use. What is kind of neat is they are doing this Asrock graphics card holder thing, and like basically, like I think it's neat. Like it's a cool idea. I don't think it's a particular. I think that would be a cool accessory to be sold separate from the motherboards. I guess that's why they're trying to get a patent on it because, yeah, I don't think anybody's gonna buy your well, no, even then, it's like. Neat idea, but I don't know that I would ever buy a motherboard just for having that. Right, Asrock is still doing the VRM fans, which they originally did this on Z490, mostly because their Z490 VRMs were really underpowered relative to the competition. So it was like, well, how do we keep the temperatures okay? Throw a fan at it. Which I guess translated to now everybody having VRM fans in their higher end boards, which I'm kind of, not a fan of because, especially on the high end ones, it's like you don't need a fan at all. Just why are we doing this? Anyway, so yeah, there's your graphics card holder, which it's kind of neat. Like it just bolts onto the side of the board. So it's always compatible because it just goes over the standoffs of the it attaches where the motherboard standoffs go. So yeah, it's a pretty clever way of doing that because well, there's been some graphics card there's been some graphics card supports that I've seen that would be like they'd like stand at the bottom of your case or something, and it's just like no, just attach it to the motherboard. I mean, it's not really attached to the motherboard; it's just attached to the same standoffs that attach the motherboard to the case. So ultimately, it's attached to the case, but those standoffs are standardized. Like every case that takes an ATX motherboard is gonna have those mounting holes. So yeah, I think that's a cool way of doing that. That I've not seen before. 8-layer PCB apparently could be at this price point. If the Z590 Tai Chi is similar in price to the Z490 Tai Chi, it might be one of the few boards to have 8 layers at this price point. Though more layers does not equal more better. Like just having more layers doesn't automatically make the motherboard better. So, yeah, it's cool that you have more layers. It'll be interesting to see if they actually translate into any real world, performance gains. Normally, it only leads to slightly better memory overclocking, if even that. Yeah, DRMOS 90 amp. I don't know why Asrock focuses on the inductors so much. Like, it's a freaking coil of wire in a fancy bit of sintered metal. It's like inductors are important, but unless you're like going out of your way to cut every possible corner, you're not going to have underpowered inductors. Like they're literally a piece of wire with a fancy casing on it. Like they're not that complicated. They also don't generate anywhere near as much heat as the MOSFETs. So it's like advertising your 90 amp power and like inductors is just like it's like I can't really think of a good analogy for this. Yeah. But anyway, like it's just that's dumb. Power stages are way more important than the inductors. Of course, until your inductors are completely useless garbage. But anyway, like to an extent. But generally speaking, power stages take priority. PCIe 4.0, yeah, we've got that on all the Z590 boards. Metal backplate. This looks like it'll actually do a decent job of adding rigidity to the board. I can't remember if the X570 Taichi had it. It might have. So yeah, the backplates are nice. Like motherboard backplates, they're cool for just adding rigidity to the board, and they also offer a little bit of extra cooling for the VRM. Right, and in terms of... Actually, I think we should have just gone to the specs page for that, right? Like that'd be way more informative. So we have killer 2.5 gig. Wait, is it 2.5 gig killer LANs on there? Oh, one Intel. Okay, so they have an Intel Gigabit and they have a 2.5 gig killer. That's a really weird combination. Like, I kind of suspect that around this price point, you're going to see boards from other vendors that are going to have, like, dual 2.5. So, yeah. But we'll see how this board's priced. You have the 3M.2 slots, which is standard for Z590. I mean, yeah, 3M.2 slots, which is standard for Z590. I'm not seeing anything that like particularly blows me away. I mean, it's a Taichi. We've seen these before. So it's got it's got the post code, it's got your power button, reset button, internal clear CMOS button, because like well, like internal clear CMOS, in my opinion, is kind of dumb. It's just like if you're gonna put a button, put it in the rear I/O. But anyway, so you do have an internal clear CMOS. If you're running a test bench, then I guess it's nice and convenient. We've got 8 SATA ports, which I think that's kind of unique to Asrock boards having like a lot of SATA ports on Z590. Though I guess maybe we'll see some Asus ones that are Asus boards that are similar. You have your internal Type-C header. Yeah, they're really like this board is entirely going to depend like how they price it, as far as I'm concerned. The feature set, like it looks okay in terms of feature set, and in terms of like power delivery, like this should have no problem handling an 11th gen. So the main thing I'm wondering about at this point is like what price is it going to be at? I wonder if they've posted a memory QVL. Oh, they have. Because Asrock's going like, yeah, DDR4 5000. And I'd love to know if they've actually QVL'd the 5000 XMP. Apparently the QVL doesn't want to load. Well, I guess let's try a different board. Maybe the memory QVL isn't up yet, and it just glitches out. Yeah, maybe that's it. Anyway, so the Extreme 4 motherboard lineup has now dropped the 4 from the name, so that's not part of the name anymore. This has power and reset buttons, but I'm not seeing a postcode, which is like the weirdest. Yeah, that is a very strange choice as far as I'm concerned. Admittedly, you know, the power and the reset button are a lot cheaper than to I'm assuming they're a lot cheaper to implement than a postcode, but it's like they're a lot less useful. Right, those are a lot less useful. 14 phase VRM, 50 amp power stages. So this is like, I think this is the same VRM they have on the Steel Legend though, because the thing is, Asrock really likes to copy paste around their motherboard. Yeah. Also same memory frequency. 50, yeah, so that's the same VRM they have on the Steel Legend. So I'm going to assume there's not going to be much of a price difference between these two. This doesn't have the power button and the reset button. It doesn't have a postcode, though, which is really stupid. Like, my favorite thing about the B550 Steel Legend was, like, it was a relatively cost-effective board that came with a postcode. That didn't ultimately help with the Steel Legend's memory overclocking capabilities, but hey, having a postcode is nice. And then now for Z590, it's like, yeah, so that was on, you know, B550, that was a great decision. We're just not going to do that again. So yeah, you just get some troubleshooting LEDs down here. And same for the Extreme. So yeah, that's disappointing. They both come with the GPU support brace. Like, this VRM will still power a, well, almost actually any CPU that you can put in LGA 1200, but it just depends how much airflow you give it at this point and how much you're overclocking the CPU. Dragon 2.5 gig. Oh, okay, so that's real tech. The funny thing to me is like having a not immediately recognizable like LAN chip is to me more concerning than just having like a name brand, even if it's not necessarily like considered the best brand ever. It's like at least it's not no name, right? So I'm not a fan of them calling it Dragon when it's just a Realtek chip. Yeah, so Realtek 2.5 gig. So I'm guessing this also has that same Realtek 2.5 gig because it seems like they're both the same board. Yep. Yeah, so that's Realtek again. Do we have 6 Sata ports? So this is gonna be going up against like the Gigabit Z590 Elite. Oh, it has dual LAN? Oh, and they have Intel Gig. Okay, wait, what does the Steel Legend have? Oh, okay. Oh, wait a minute. Okay, no, this is going to be a lot more expensive then. And it has 5 Type A USB ports. How many, like, this was like a major problem I had with Asrock's Z490s was like there was no USB ports on the back. And it's just like, look, it's a motherboard. The only thing it does is connect stuff to my CPU. It should have a lot of, like, it should have quite a few USB ports in my opinion, right? Like it's a basic functionality a motherboard should offer. Okay, yeah, no, they just haven't learned at all. Okay, well, this on a freaking ATX motherboard is like, the hell is this? Why does this have 2 display outputs? Just like nobody is gonna use their iGPU for 2 different like USB ports, please. Thank you very much. Like they've got 5 USB ports in the back. Admittedly, you know, some people don't care. Some people only have a keyboard and a mouse. But as far as I'm concerned, it's like it's a desktop motherboard. There's no reason, like it's a full-size ATX. There's no reason you could have more USB ports. Okay, so this still hasn't changed. The Extreme and the Steel Legend regular are just like, oh, it's the same board but without the Wi-Fi now. Yeah. And Asrock doesn't even bother with having different cutouts, but that's fine. Like, I honestly don't, like, I don't see a problem with them only having the Wi-Fi, like, with the cutout with the Wi-Fi antenna holes. Like, it doesn't make a difference. Also, I'm not a fan of the big plastic airflow restrictor over the VRM heatsink. The heatsinks themselves look kind of okay, but yeah, that right there is just like, that's not great. I wonder if they stuffed a fan somewhere in this. Yeah, like, that's the thing is, like, Asrock advertises the inductors because getting a high current inductor is a lot easier than getting a high current MOSFET a lot of the time. So, yeah, 60 amp inductors. Also, I wonder if that's saturation current or RMS current. And the difference between those two is, like, saturation current is when, like, the inductor, like, starts having electrical problems, whereas RMS current is like how much heat is relative to how much heat it produces due to DC current flow. So saturation current is like when the inductor stops working. So yeah, I'm not really a big fan of advertising your inductors. Okay, apparently there's no fan in the VRM heatsink, so that's good. And this, yeah, this doesn't have a memory QVL. So, the Taichi is nice, but it'll depend on the price. These, like, there's so few USB ports on them, and they don't do anything, like, I guess if you need dual LAN, then the extremes make sense, but, like, the Steel Legend, like, if this is going up against... Like, this is just straight up going up against the Z490, Z590 Elite from Gigabit, which has a better VRM, if I remember correctly. Actually, even the cheaper boards from Gigabit would do a better job than this. Because that's a, what is that? That's a, where's the Steel Legend? 211. Oh, and that's the Wi-Fi version, and the non-Wi-Fi version is 200. Even, like, the thing is, even Gigabit's lower end boards are similar in terms of specs, so yeah, I'm not very impressed with that. Anyway, let's see Z490 Pro. I mean Z590 Pro 4. Okay, oh look, it's another Steel Legend. Right, because 14 phase, 4800, 50 amp DR MOS. Now we have 50 amp inductors. Wait, did they change the inductors between the boards? This one's on 60s. This one they don't talk about what current rating it has, so though it looks a lot like the 50 amp ones on the Pro 4, so yeah. I'm kind of thinking this is probably on the same inductors as the Pro 4, so they're actually like, it's like, oh yeah, we're advertising the high spec inductors because we actively change parts for this. Okay, you have troubleshooting LEDs up there. Okay, no, it's not the same board. They've shuffled stuff around, but it is the same VRM. So this actually, how's the rear? Well, honestly, I prefer this to to having a Type C because the only thing I have with a Type C port is a phone. And, you know, even the phone has a charging cable that ends in a Type A, so that's not really that useful. I'm going to guess this is, like, considering the Steel Legend is 194 without Wi-Fi, this is probably going to be 170, maybe 160. At which point, like, it's going up against it's going to be going up against, like, the Gigabit Z590 UD. And the UD has troubleshooting LEDs. Has the same number of M.2 slots. If I remember correctly, it also had 2.5 gig LAN. So I'm really failing to see a reason why this is like, why you would get this instead. Because the UD also has more USB ports. Well, I'm still, like, at least, like, the thing is, the Z490 Pro 4 was also absolutely horrendous in the VRM department, so it looks like they fixed that side of things, and so this time around it won't be like, oh, the board also just can't even run CPUs properly. Yeah, I'm not sure, like, I'm not impressed with this at all. Like, yeah, I'm not impressed by this. So moving on, we've got the Z590 Phantom Gaming Velocita. Okay, so 14 phase VRM. Did they 50 amp power stages? Oh, finally a decent number of USB ports. But I'm pretty sure this board is going to be like... This is going to be approaching $300, isn't it? Yeah, this is totally going to be approaching $300. It's got your postcode. It's got PCIe 4.0 switches right there. Those are expensive. Power button, reset button. Okay. The postcode is in, as far as I'm concerned, the wrong location, but it's not really a huge deal. We've got 6 SATA ports. If this is over $300, it's horrible. If this was around $250, then it's kind of interesting. Also, I'm guessing there's a fan in... Yeah, there's a fan in the VRM, isn't there? There's probably 2 of them. Which, honestly, on this, like... The thing is, this is one of those VRMs where it's like, yeah, this can run any CPU. It's just going to depend on airflow. And so the fans on this actually make sense as far as I'm concerned. And if they don't price the board to like if it's under $300, I think that's actually that's actually kind of neat. That would make this board very interesting in my opinion. But if this is over $300, I would just rather get something from somebody else. So yeah, you've got 3M.2 SSD. Yeah, because the Gigabyte Z590 Pro AX is supposed to be like just under $300-ish. And you don't have a postcode, but you have a like much better, like you have a VRM with 90 amp power stages instead of 50s. Same phase count. You don't have the power button, reset button. You get 4 M.2 slots instead of just 3. You still have 6 SATA ports. So basically you give up like overclocking features and it's just... So yeah, like hopefully this is like $250. Like I'm really hoping that this is around $250 because if it's much above that, then it's like I would just rather... And I think MSI also has a board that would probably be... even Asus probably does. Well, I'm not sure about that, but definitely like if this was priced at the same price as the Gigabyte Z590 Pro AX, I'd take the Pro AX. Though I guess if you want dual LAN, then that's one sort of like that's an advantage that this right here does have, where it's like you've got your 2.5 gig killer, which I think like apparently is now Intel, and then you've got Intel Gigabit. So basically, you have Intel 2.5 gig and Intel 2.5, Intel 2.5 and Intel 1 gig. So yeah, that's not like this. This I think is along with the Tai Chi. This is a pretty interesting board. Let's see, Z590. I keep saying 490. Z590 Phantom Gaming 4AC. 8-phase power design. Yeah, okay. Does this use power stages? No. Okay, this is going to use some god-awful discrete MOSFETs, isn't it? So this is going to overheat. And... like, this might be incapable of running a stock 11th Gen 8 core. Like, MC... well, Okay, no, that's not true. Because the thing is, if Intel, like Intel, you know, with their TDP, they have the 125 watt power limit. And it's like, well, if you have a good motherboard, the CPU can run at unlimited, like, can just run at max power draw constantly. Whereas if your motherboard looks like this, then the CPU is going to actually follow that 125 watt limit because, like, your motherboard looks like this. So, yeah. Hopefully, the thing is, as long as it delivers, well, no, because it'll just be slow. Like, I'm not sure. Depends how cheap this is. But the thing is, there's a hard limit on how cheap your motherboard can be, because at some point, you know, just like the packaging material, like the cheaper your motherboard is, the larger a percentage of its, you know, cost is in things like the packaging material and not like non-negotiable necessities like chipsets and CPU sockets and DIMM slots and power connectors, all things that, you know, your motherboard must have in order to be a motherboard, but ultimately don't help with performance, right? Like so that's kind of the thing, is just like, so as a motherboard gets cheaper, the build quality just nosedives off of a cliff at some point, because there's a bunch of things that it's like, well, if you wanted to have, you know, 4 DIMM slots, you got no choice. You're going to be paying for 4 DIMM slots. You're going to be paying whatever price for the chipset, and that's fixed. You're not going to get a cheap, like, if you're building a cheap Z590 motherboard, that chipset still costs the same as if you were building an $800 Z590 motherboard. So that's kind of the thing, is like, so this looks really cheap, but because it's a Z590 board, I'm like, this could easily end up being like maybe $20 cheaper than an actually good motherboard. And then it's like, why wouldn't you just get the actually good motherboard? Like, this motherboard is very much in the territory of like, well, I wouldn't want to overclock. I'm not sure I'd want to overclock on this anyway, so you may as well just get like a locked motherboard, right? Like something without a Z590 chipset, because it's not like you really want to be overclocking on this anyway. Especially since like B560 is going to have memory overclocking support. Any redeeming features? I'm not even seeing like troubleshooting LEDs, which I guess makes sense, but yeah, it's like, it really depends how they price this. And then also how it runs your CPU, because the thing is, if it runs your CPU, like if it runs your 125 watt, I'm just going to quickly check that. Intel Arc 10900K. Yeah, 125 watt CPU. Right. And actually, if your motherboard sucks enough, it can underclock itself to 95 watts. So basically, if you have a good motherboard, your CPU is going to be running at like 250 watts and around 4.7 gigahertz all-core. If your motherboard sucks, the CPU will automatically underclock itself to 3.7. So, yeah, that's kind of the thing with these super low-end motherboards on Z590, is like, but will it even run a 10900K at full speed? I'm not sure it will. I kind of doubt it. So, yeah, I'm really not a fan of these super cheap, like, Z-series boards, because it's just like, it's not going to even run the chip at stock properly. So we have a no-name Gigabit Lan. Okay, it's Intel Gigabit Lan. Yeah, but my main concern with a board like this is like, can it even run a 10900K of full speed? So moving on, because I kind of doubt it. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if it couldn't. Okay, so then we have the same board but without the Wi-Fi. Also, there's like, of course, there's no USB ports in the back. So yeah, this is more of the same. What else do we have? We have an MATX version of more of the same again. Yeah, there's no way this is running a 10900K at full speed. not for sustained workloads. Like it's either the board is gonna immediately just follow the Intel power draw spec, as in it's gonna go right back. Like if you run an all-core workload, it's immediately gonna go down to 125 watts after the turbo limit times out, or it's gonna VRM thermal throttle eventually. One of the two, because this does not look like something capable of delivering 200 and. If I'm not mistaken, an 10900K when it's running full boost pulls like 250 watts. This doesn't look like it's going to deliver 250 watts, mostly because of the heat sinks. Also depends on your airflow situation somewhat, but yeah, under most circumstances, this should not be delivering 250 watts, especially since it doesn't even have power stages, so it's going to have probably Asrock's favorite flavor of really, really garbage MOSFETs. Yeah. Anyway, they have an MATX version of that. Oh, this does have troubleshooting LEDs. Wait a minute. Does the MATX have troubleshooting LEDs and the ATX boards don't? Or am I just blind? No. I'm not. This has LEDs down here for troubleshooting. This doesn't. Or at least if it does have them, then they're like in some weird location that I've never seen them in before. Actually, we could scroll through here. I bet they advertise it somewhere. Yeah, and this is the benefit of advertising your 50 amp chokes, because when you... Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Wait. Right, there's a VCCSA rail. And a VCCIO rail. Oh, man, I really misread how many... Wait, does this have a display? This does have a display output. Oh, it's way worse. So this is probably like a 6-phase V-core. Oh, boy. Okay, yeah, there's no way this is running a 10900K at full speed. Or an 11900K at full speed, for that matter. So that's fun. Anyway, what else do we have? Actually, I think this might be the same VRM they had on the Z490 boards, which were terrible. Yeah, it is the same VRM they had on the terrible Z490 boards. Okay, so then we don't have to worry about it. It's not going to run a 10900K at full speed. Like, you're not going to even be, like, I'm not talking overclocking. I'm just saying, like, this thing's not going to be able to sustain all-core turbo. Because the VRM is, like, the board's either going to power throttle or the VRM's going to overheat. So, yeah, this is just kind of terrible. I wonder what Asrock calls the troubleshooting LEDs, though, because... I could have sworn I saw them, like, advertise it on one of these boards. Oh, well, anyway, moving on, what else do we have? We have a Z590M Pro 4. So this looks like a slightly cut down version of the VRM on the Steel Legend, or the ATX Pro 4. We've got troubleshooting LEDs at the bottom. That's nice to see. What's the specs? Yeah, so 50 amp DR MOS. So we're gonna have a... That should be VCCSA. Then I'm going to assume 10-phase V-core and 2-phase iGPU. Though they could even do 11-phase V-core and 1-phase iGPU if they really wanted to. I'm not a fan of this rear I/O. But the thing is, like, for MATX motherboards, you don't really like right now. It really doesn't look great for MATX in terms of motherboard options. So this might be like the only acceptable low cost like MATX motherboard option for Z590, which is like, oh well, you know, like that's basically the participation award. It's like you made a motherboard that's in this form factor. Nobody else did. Here you go. So yeah. Well, that tells you all you need to know about what kind of priorities went into making this motherboard. Anyway, but this, honestly, this doesn't look too bad. Considering this is one of the only options, like, it could be worse. Though I guess Asus is probably going to have a Z590M dash, like, Z590G Strix, so that should actually be quite decent. See? Like, this is fine if you are making an ITX board. It's not fine when you're making an ATX board. Right? Like, this is literally the ITX rear I/O just stretched across far more space. Okay, 8-phase VRM. This is not like an overclocking board. Honestly, this is another one of those boards where I'm looking at it like, wait a minute. Well, a 6-core might run okay on this, but like, and by that I don't mean a Rocket Lake 6-core, because Rocket Lake 6-core is going to pull quite a bit more power than a 10600K. Actually, no, you might be able to get away with it depending on just how much airflow you run over that VRM heatsink, though. You know, this board's meant for ITX builds, so that's not really a huge concern. Now I'm going to guess this is going to be somewhere around the $180 mark, maybe $170, somewhere around there. Like, it's not going to be super cheap. Oh, looks like this is pretty good at memory overclocking, so that's kind of neat. So, like, for a budget ITX board, this could be a lot worse as far as I'm concerned. Like, this is not as bad as it could be. This is actually kind of okay. So, yeah, and you get, wait, this still has dual LAN, so that's actually kind of impressive how they managed to squeeze that in there. So yeah, you get 2.5 gig Realtek and 1 gig Intel. So yeah, that's pretty neat that they squeezed dual LAN onto an ITX. Wait a minute. 8-phase DRMOS power design. Wait, what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Oh, right. So system agent is right at the bottom. Cool. Yeah, so you'll have system agent right at the bottom, then you'll have 6 phases of E-core. So this can technically run a 8-core 14 nanometer CPU. You just need a lot of airflow over the heatsink. And I know this because I've run a similar-ish VRM design with a 9900K. And yeah, like, it's doable. You just need a hell of a lot of airflow at that point. So yeah, this honestly, like, if they took this VRM and put it onto, like, one of these, that would actually be an upgrade. Because this is just a straight up, like, this VRM right here is just straight up better than whatever is on these. Especially if you also stretched, like, if this was, like, if the layout of this VRM was adjusted to take up more physical space on an ATX board, it would actually work out better. But the funny thing is, like, the reason why the ITX board gets, like, the thing is, this VRM actually probably costs more in parts than this does. So, yeah. That's like the thing is, like, yeah, it might, but both of them might be 8-phase VRMs, but one of them is actually using power stages, whereas I don't trust Asrock to use proper MOSFETs. Mostly because I don't think I've ever, like, ever since the CSD 87350 dual NFETs stopped being, well, popular with motherboard vendors. I don't think I've seen a single Asrock motherboard where they used, like, discrete MOSFETs that didn't suck. Like, you have two options. You have power stages or you have terrible MOSFETs. So, yeah. This thing is, this is definitely an avoid in my book. Like, just avoid the low-end Asrock boards again. Because, like, you'd be better off with a locked chipset, or more like you'd be indifferent with a locked chipset, except the locked chipset would probably cost less. So, yeah. Anyway, in terms of the, like, but what is interesting in Asrock's lineup, like, we've got the ITX. Whoa, I to kill off some of these tabs. It's getting out of control. So yeah, we're gonna end the video here because Asrock's lineup is not that big. So that's kind of neat. So the Tai Chi looks like, you know, depending on the price, this could actually be quite good. The Velocita, like, also, like, depending on how they price this, this could be quite good. If it's cheaper than, you know, like if it's, yeah, if it's cheaper than like a Gigabyte Pro AX, then this is pretty neat. If it's more expensive than a Pro AX, then this is really dumb. If it costs the same as a Pro AX, then it's very debatable in my opinion. But yeah. What else do we have? And then we had, honestly, no. No, I think the MATX and the ITX board are the only other ones worth like that are noteworthy, right? Like this probably, and this mostly because I don't think there's going to be many MATX options in general. So this is probably going to be the cheapest MATX board that's like worth getting unless MSI comes out with something. And then this is going to be the cheapest ITX. Like I straight up don't think there's going to be a cheaper ITX board on Z590 than this. And honestly, it could be worse. Like for a budget ITX board, it could be a lot worse. This is not like, yeah, this looks okay actually, for what it is. So yeah, like I really hope they don't price this board stupidly. Because that's the thing is, like, I'm a huge fan of having postcodes on motherboards, right? Like, these are so useful. And the rear I/O on this actually looks like this is a solid rear I/O. So it's like, so we've basically got all the things that I require to consider a motherboard acceptable. And so now the only concern is like, so please don't charge over 300 bucks for it, because that wouldn't be okay. Yeah, so that's the main thing I'm wondering about. Is just like, what price is this going to be at? Yeah, active fan cooling, so they do point it out, right? Active fan cooling. So yeah, I think this is probably the most competitive, like, depending on the price, this is probably going to be Asrock's most interesting motherboard. The rest of their lineup is just kind of like, well, I need a cheap MATX and I need a cheap ITX, and then this is like, I'm not sure. Like, I guess if you really want, well, no, the thing is, this is what, 2.5 and 1 gig. And this is 2.5 and 1 gig. So this basically sort of negates, like, the... This is a Velocita with 90 amp power stages. Like, that's the main difference, isn't it? Oh, and I guess they gave it a BIOS flashback button. But that's irrelevant. Like, on Z590, like, on a Ryzen motherboard, okay, you know, BIOS flashback, very useful because AMD has CPUs that are compatible across lots and lots of boards. But on a Z5, like, on a Z590, it's just kind of like, there's not going to be another generation of CPUs after 11th gen on this socket. So what are you going to be updating your BIOS for? Because it ain't going to be the 12th gen. Yeah, so I think this is definitely the most interesting motherboard in Asrock's Z590 lineup. Hopefully it doesn't have an uninteresting price tag to it. And that's it for the video, because, yeah, there's not that many... Well, Asrock has a lot of different SKUs, but there's a lot of copy-pasting going on between them, right? Like, these four are basically the same motherboard. Actually, not basically. They're the same board in different color schemes. These two are the same thing. This is also the same thing, but shorter. And then, you know, oops. And yeah, so that's kind of that. Anyway, so thanks for watching. Like, share, subscribe, leave any comments, questions, suggestions down in the comment section below. If you'd like to support what I do here with actually hardcore overclocking, I have a Patreon. There's a link to that down in the description below. There's also the HOC Teespring store where you can pick up shirts, stickers, posters, you know, the usual YouTuber merch. Both the Patreon and Teespring help out immensely with running the channel, so it would be much appreciated if you'd check out the links. And yeah, that's it for the video. Thanks for watching, and goodbye.